What happens when a high school sweetheart's relationship turns toxic and then ends in tragedy? Well, you're about to find out. Hello and welcome, my name is In It for the Spooks, and today we will be talking about the case of Mary Katherine Higdon and Stephen Freeman.
911, where's your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I actually, my gun was tapered, and I'm so sorry. I just tell my boyfriend in the night. I'm so sorry.
On the night of August 1st, 2018, around 10:42 p.m., police responded to a frantic 911 call to 817 Sunnybrook Drive, Griffin, Georgia. On the 911 call, the perpetrator admits to accidentally shooting her boyfriend in the chest while handing him the gun. She claims that they liked having a weapon by their side when they went to bed. Lieutenant Chris Wilson was the first on the scene, and there he found the victim, Stephen Freeman, laying on a mattress in the living room. He also found his girlfriend, Mary Katherine Higdon, the one who called 911, hovering over him, also in the living room.
Hey, open door, open door.
Help me, please help me, please help me, please. We were just trying to get her. I was just getting my on the way to the bed.
Keep pressure on, keep
Please help me.
keep pressure on it.
Please help me. I am.
Somebody give me some gloves. Somebody give me some
Please
gloves.
help me. Please help me.
All right, get some gloves.
Check the cigarettes, got bullets. Out good. Very weak. Okay.
Ma'am, come on, come on.
Two rooms right now. One room. How many bullets were fired, man?
No, it was just one. I was just walking in here and I just
Just one round was fired? Okay.
Out. It was just
All right.
because we like to sleep with the gun beside
Do me a
and
favor.
now we haven't moved our bed into the
Stand up, stand up, stand up.
Do me a favor, okay? Next get in here, let us do some work, okay? Go with that officer, go that way, please. Officer Johnson, okay? What's his name? What's his name?
Please, my dad stop me.
Man, come on.
Ma'am, go that way.
Work on him.
If I can all listen.
While tending to Freeman, first responders also noticed that there was food strewn about all over the kitchen floor and surrounding cabinets. This led investigators to believe that there might have been an altercation beforehand, and this wasn't an accident like Mary Katherine was claiming. Police then escorted Mary Katherine Higdon down to the police station to get an interview on the night's events. A few minutes before midnight, Stephen Freeman passed away due to his injuries. Stephen was just 23 years old at the time of his death. Stephen Freeman was born in Thomaston, Georgia on January 1st, 1995. His mother, Jennifer Freeman, describes him as being a devoted son, kind, loyal, and compassionate. His mother says that when he was a child, he always had a big bright smile on his face, and that smile stuck with him into adulthood. Stephen even wrote his mother a note when she went back to college to get her degree. They even had a thing between the two of them where they would say, "I love you more," or "I love you to the moon and back." Stephen is also described as having a heart of gold, a bounce in his step, and having a sweet southern drawl. Mary Katherine Higdon had a happy childhood and was loved by her friends and family growing up. She was fun-loving and liked being the center of attention. She was always the entertainment in the room, no matter what age, her father, Tom Higdon, has said. Her father even tells a story of how she had a pet frog growing up and she would walk it around the neighborhood tied to a shoestring. Her father and sister, Sarah Higdon, have also said that life would be boring without her. Stephen attended Spalding High, where Mary Katherine also attended. The two met and quickly began dating. The two shared their passions of the outdoors, guns, and hunting. Stephen liked to go camping, fishing, and hunting. He would normally hunt deer and ducks. Stephen's friends, Thomas Skinner, Andrew McCree, and Chase Pruitt, all approved of Mary Katherine when the two began dating. And since they were a close-knit group, this was very important to Stephen. The two moved in together after graduation. After graduating from Gordon State, Stephen worked at Drainwright Gutters and Roofing, Inc. Mary Katherine had a job as a teacher's assistant at St. George's Episcopal School. Mary Katherine also had a job selling firearms at Barry's Sporting Goods. Thomas Skinner also happened to work there. The couple had been dating for 7 years. While being interviewed, investigators did not believe Mary Katherine's story, and the interview quickly became an interrogation. After being pressed by investigators, Mary Katherine cracked and confessed to shooting her boyfriend Stephen Freeman out of anger. Believing that investigators caught this glorious confession on tape, they arrested Mary Katherine for murder. Unfortunately, the tape in the interview room had feedback on it, so you couldn't hear the audio at all. They couldn't fix it, and the tape couldn't be used.
I mean, the only thing it was is...
While interviewing the couple's friends, investigators learned that the relationship had turned toxic over the years, and most of the blame for the toxicity was being placed on Mary Katherine. Thomas Skinner claims that Mary Katherine had become a possessive and obsessive girlfriend. One of Stephen's co-workers also corroborates this and says that one time, Stephen received up to 30 calls from Mary Katherine. One neighbor, Jeanette Head, claims that arguing was also common with the couple. The toxicity between the couple had grown too much for Stephen, and he wanted to leave Mary Katherine. He planned on moving out of town with his best friend, Thomas Skinner. He was killed 2 days before he was set to leave. In the 48-hour documentary, David Becknod, Andrew, Stephen's friend, comes forward and says that Stephen texted him twice that Mary Katherine had pointed a gun at him. Once on April 21st, 2018, 3 months before the shooting, and then again a month later. The text messages from April 21st say that Mary Katherine was pointing a gun at Stephen and at herself. Then, a month later, Stephen texted Andrew and said that he was actually scared she might shoot her, and then he saw a look in her eyes that terrified him. And then, wouldn't you know it, on August 1st, 2018, Stephen Freeman was shot and killed by his girlfriend. Since police no longer had the confession tape, they had to rely on forensic evidence. Kate Leonard, the prosecutor on the case, had 4 main pieces of physical evidence that she used in court. One being that her and her team discovered that Mary Katherine had changed her story up to 10 times. Some examples of this include a 911 call where she said she handed Stephen the gun and it accidentally went off. And then when she told investigators that she tossed Stephen the gun and it accidentally went off. And 3 being the confession where she said she shot him out of anger. And then a 4th one being she didn't know. And then 5th being that it was out of self-defense. Keep that in mind, we will be returning to that topic later. The second main point of evidence being that there is cooking grease found all over the gun. There is grease all over the side and inside the gun. Because there is cooking grease found inside the gun and on the magazine, this shows that Mary Katherine had to have taken the magazine and loaded it directly into the gun, and then pointed and shot it at Stephen. Bringing up the third main piece of evidence, the bloody bed sheet. This also disproves the self-defense aspect that Mary Katherine had claimed earlier. She told investigators of Stephen's alleged history of abuse. This bringing up Leonard's 4th main piece of evidence, the fact that Mary Katherine never filed any police reports or told anyone of this alleged abusive history. So the blood spatter on the sheet is all in one concentrated corner area. So Mary Katherine says that she was holding the gun up because she was scared of Stephen. Mary Katherine said that Stephen threw food in her face, and this caused her to become scared of Stephen, and again with the alleged abusive history. So she says she picked up the gun, but didn't know that it was chambered, and then Stephen lunged at her, and then the gun accidentally went off. So you see how her stories are kind of not making sense now, right? Because she claims she never has the guns chambered, but then, just so conveniently, there's her gun. She says in the 911 call too, it's been tampered with, so she didn't know there's a bullet in the chamber. But if you picked it up, and then, why would you press the trigger? She claimed that he lunged at her, but going back to the bed sheet, the blood spatter on the bed sheet was all in one concentrated pool in the corner. So, going back to the documentary, if he had actually lunged at her when she shot the gun, then there should be blood off the mattress, but there wasn't any. So that means that Stephen was either sitting down or laying down on the mattress. I'm not really sure about that part. But yeah, he was just sitting there, and then she shot him. So again, just to recap Kate Leonard's 4 main pieces of physical evidence, we have 1, that she changed her story 10 times. 2, the grease on the gun, which to me is the most important evidence because it proves that, she had to load the gun, she had to physically grab the magazine and load the gun and then shoot it, or at least point and shoot. The 3rd main piece of evidence being the bed sheet, which again, the blood is pooled. There's not like blood droplets pointing to him moving or anything, so it proves that he was stagnant, not moving when the gun went off. And then the 4th piece of evidence being that, Mary Katherine claims abuse and, the self-defense aspect, but yet she never told anyone, never came out about it, and then never filed a police report. So now I'm going to go into some of the stuff that negates Kate Leonard's evidence and also had a massive effect on the outcome of the trial. So one of the things that came up in court and during the investigation was it was found out that the first responders moved the gun, which, if you know anything about crime scene investigation, forensics, all of that, you're not really supposed to move the murder weapon. Don't touch the murder weapon. Don't do anything. Leave the crime scene as it is, And so Kate Leonard even says this, again bringing up the documentary. It was just as easy to move Mary Katherine because they claimed that she was reaching for the gun, and so instead of removing Mary Katherine, they moved the gun, which is totally idiotic and was messed up by the police officers and the first responders at that point. Again, that makes me angry because I know stuff about crime scene investigation, all that. Never move the murder weapon. Don't mess with the evidence. And another thing that came up during the trial is that a year before, and then Mary Katherine's defense attorneys also used this against to prove that the abusive history was real. A year prior, these nasty messages that Stephen had sent to Mary Katherine, and then Stephen's mother says, gives some insight into it. She says, Stephen found out that Mary Katherine had cheated on him because they had an on-again and off-again relationship. So he found out that Mary Katherine had cheated on him with one of his friends while they were broken up. And so his mother goes to say, I don't condone what he did, but it's a normal reaction. He was hurt that she cheated and everything. You kind of get more insight from Stephen's mother, but again, think of it what you will. And then there's also a photo of Stephen holding up a dead fish, and then the captain says, "This is you, bitch." And basically, it's kind of implying that he's like dead to her, or he's gonna, and it like kind of shows his abusive history, his alleged abusive history. Also, 2 weeks before the shooting, Mary Katherine's sister, Sarah Higdon, said that she saw bruises on her arm. When Kate Leonard was, confronting Mary Katherine about this, she said she was embarrassed, didn't want to, she was embarrassed that Stephen was abusing her, embarrassed, didn't want to tell the police. That's why she never filed a police report, never talked about it with friends. And then Kate Leonard brings this up, is that she never texted her friends about it, and then Mary Katherine's like, "Well, yeah, I never texted that stuff, but I would tell them." or something like that. Alright, so now really going into the trial. On June 17th, 2019, 24-year-old Mary Katherine Higdon goes on trial for murder. So going into it, Mary Katherine takes a stand to defend herself because people like Thomas Skinner, you know, Stephen's best friend, were going up there and basically being a character witness. Stephen even starts talking about how at the sporting goods store where they both work, they're trained to know how to handle a gun. And, you know, he also said that Mary Katherine would always be bragging about her knowledge of guns and how much better she was. And so basically Thomas is saying, you know, she's so trained on how to use guns, she has so much knowledge, how would the gun accidentally go off? And then also, once again, bring up the 48 Hours documentary, Detective Adam Trammell, I don't know how to say that. Basically, he like shows how, going back to the cooking grease, he shows how the cooking grease could have gotten inside the gun, on the magazine, on the side, her loading it. David Begnaud asks, you know, could this have possibly been an accident? And he said, not with this gun, which was a Glock 43, by the way. He said, no, not in this gun. Accidents rarely happen with this gun, so it was most likely that it was, you know, she had intent to kill. It wasn't an accident like she was claiming. But her defense mainly focused on the alleged history of abuse aspect, you know, claiming that it was out of self-defense, and then going back to, you know, how her story changes all the time. She said she didn't know that the gun was loaded, but yet she was pointing at him, telling him to get out of the house, and then he supposedly lunged at her, and so she pressed the trigger. Like, yeah, I guess how that could kind of be a reflex, but like, why? Why would you, like that, like you see how you see how that doesn't make sense, how her stories keep changing, they don't line up, you know, especially with the evidence and the blood sheet, going back to that again. And so what the defense, the defense brings up the text messages. Then Mary Katherine brings up that Stephen had essayed her on 2 different occasions, along with the abuse. So one being, the couple had a red room. If you know what 50 Shades of Grey is, you probably know. But for those of you who don't, it's basically a room where I'm trying. Can I say kink shame? I'm not trying to kink shame anyone, but like, you know, this obviously isn't a kid-friendly channel, but I'm not trying to get my video taken down. Not trying to make YouTube mad, you know. So basically, a red room is where people keep their like BDSM toys. Like if you've seen American Horror Story, you know how there's that leather, you know, suit that the sub is supposed to go in, kind of like that. That's like that's like kind of like a red room where all the sex toys would be. Like that's where that would be. And so basically, Mary Katherine said, you know, one time they were in the red room and the sex had become too rough. She told Stephen to stop, but he didn't, and so, you know, it got too rough, and then he ended up essaying her. And then the second occasion being that the couple had just gone to Disneyland. Again, they were in the red room. And so he was like telling Mary Katherine, you know, I spent all this money at Disneyland for us. I'm entitled to this. Give me what I want. And so, you know, she does that. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen because, you know, going back to Kate Leonard, you know, saying, why didn't you tell anyone? I'm not saying that abuse like this happens where the woman or the abusee is, you know, getting SA'd, abused, and they can hide it really well. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but, you know, Kate Leonard says, you know, it's so convenient, and it's like, she goes into saying how, you know, you're calling a dead man a rapist and an abuser, and he's not alive, he can't defend himself. And she's saying, you had every opportunity to tell police that he lunged at you, that he was abusive, that he was hitting you, hurting you, essaying you. You had every opportunity. And I'm not saying that women and abusees, because, it happens to men too. I'm not saying that they hide it, but it's just so convenient for her that now here she is on trial, and she's claiming, that he's abusive and sexually and essaying her. It's like so convenient, and like I know it happens, and it's a real thing that happens, and it's a major problem all around the world. But sometimes women, because it's mostly girls, I'm not saying boys, it happens to everyone, but a majority of victims are women. And so sometimes, because I've heard so many stories of men being accused of being rapists and their lives being destroyed, being left by their spouses, not being able to get jobs, being thrown in jail for women claiming that they were sexually assaulted, SA'd, for women claiming they were SA'd, and then, their lives are just ruined. So, I'm not saying that it does happen. I'm saying that it does happen, but there are also instances where, people use it as a scapegoat. And I'm supposed to be unbiased, but you can probably tell what my stance is. And so, that's pretty much a majority of the trial is, the defense attorney's main was the abusive history. And then I believe in the closing arguments, Kate Leonard surprises the courtroom, and then she shows a few hours before the deadly shooting that Mary Katherine, on a babysitting job, was looking up violent popcorn. I'm gonna take a page out of Wendigoon's book and not say it and refer to a food item. And so basically, she was looking up violent popcorn at her babysitting job. She was looking up gang rape, bondage, and then Kate brings this up. She's like, why would you look this up? You're saying you're an abuse victim, and like, why would you do that? Why would you give yourself PTSD, relive all of that trauma? But then, before that, Mary Katherine's like, well, we were fighting, we were in an argument. I wanted to please him when he came home. Going back to Thomas Skinner, he said like the day before she had tracked them down because they got in an argument the day before. And so Stephen, he left and he stayed the night at a friend's house. And so Jennifer Freeman, Stephen's mother, like, told Mary Katherine where he was because she didn't want to lie to her. Their two families were pretty close. Like, Mary Katherine was part of the family because, they'd been dating for 7 years. They were high school sweethearts. Jennifer Freeman harbors a lot of guilt because she feels like, maybe if I hadn't told Mary Katherine, my son would still be alive, because when Mary Katherine found out where Stephen was, he literally tracked him down, and he was in the car with Thomas Skinner. So Thomas Skinner is a witness. That day, August 1st, 2018, Mary Katherine had tracked him down in their car and then had yelled at Stephen, pulled up next to them, yelled at Stephen, and was talking and was saying, like, are you going to come home? Are you coming home for dinner? And then, like Stephen says along the line, stop being crazy, yes, I'm coming home. And then, he shot. It just kind of shows how she's crazy and stuff. again, sorry for going on a tangent. But yeah, she was looking up violent popcorn. And again, why would you do that? Give yourself PTSD, relive that. That's the main trial of the aspect. Now going on to the jury's decision. Literally a few minutes after getting the case, the jury was like 10-2 decision guilty. But then the last two jurors, they had a problem with the police's investigation. They had a problem that the gun was moved. They had a problem with the confession tape. They're like, it's such a small, we know it's a small town, but, why couldn't you get the tape fixed? Why couldn't you fix the audio? Investigators spent $1,800 to unlock Mary Catherine's phone to get her search history, text messages, all of that, see what kind of person she was online, look at all that stuff. But the jurors had a problem that they didn't spend another $18,000 to look into Steven's phone to really prove the guy he was. Because again, Mary Catherine was in tears when she went over her testimony about the abuse and the essaying. So, either she's a really good actress or Stephen Freeman is not the man that everyone is cutting him out to be. Going back, the jurors are like, why couldn't you spend the other $2,000 to look into Stephen's phone and confirm what kind of person he was? But again, going into the fact that I know that investigators have a budget on certain things, they have a limited budget, so you don't know what the budget for the investigation was. You don't know, because there could have been, maybe they didn't have the funds, maybe they weren't able to afford to crack into Steven's phone. But I'm just gonna say right here, they do kind of make a good point about that. It's $2,000, but again, you don't know what the police station's budget is. So these two jurors ended up changing everyone else's minds, and Mary Catherine was acquitted of all charges. So I had to go look into my investigation research notebook. So basically, Mary Catherine was acquitted of malice murder and aggravated assault and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. So she was acquitted of that. So now Mary Catherine, she's moved out of state. I do not believe she lives in the state of Georgia anymore. She has a very low profile. She keeps a very low profile. Has little to no social media presence and all of that. She's you're accused of murder, you go on trial for murder, obviously you're going to want to move away from that, start over, leave that behind you. And then Stephen's mother, Jennifer Freeman, is a big advocate for abuse, against abuse in honor of Stephen. She has a Facebook page, and I was looking at it. There is a vigil, and then there's a 5K. So that was the case of Mary Catherine Higdon and Stephen Freeman. Please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and leaving a comment down below, and turning on post notifications. My name is In It for the Spooks, and please remember to stay spooky. In the 48-hour documentary, where most of my information is coming from,